A quick disclaimer before we start this out-of-character episode of Coffee and Carbuncles. For those that don't know what Gateway Fate is, it is a purely fan-hosted Final Fantasy XIV convention that took place in St. Charles, Missouri, right outside of the city of St. Louis. This is the second year for the convention, and since I've been asked by some of the listeners of this podcast to talk about my experiences at the convention this year, I decided to make this episode. Also, before I get into Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be discussing a bit about the road trip to the event, our hotel, and the city of St. Charles, Missouri. If that doesn't interest you, please skip forward to the part that says Saturday. That will be about the convention proper. Thank you. Alright, for those of you still here, let's dive into it. This year, instead of flying, I actually rode with a friend from my city on a 4-hour-long journey to St. Charles. It was my free company member, Yuzuri. She recently got into the game, she's still on Heaven's Word, and even though she hasn't been playing that long, she was super excited to go to Gateway Fate when I brought it up a couple months back. Given all of the issues with flying lately, I was so happy when she offered to drive. We talked all about Final Fantasy, mutual friends, and honestly, just all kinds of things. We had like a 10-year period where we kind of lost touch, and so the road trip provided a lot of nice catch-up time. Honestly, the 4 hours just went by really quick. I love arriving at the hotel that hosts Gateway Fate. It's so pretty, you guys. And I had so much fun showing Yuzuri pictures from last year before we went to the convention, and then showing her the actual places in person once we arrived. Though, if I'm honest, after a 4-hour drive, we were also just glad to be out of the car and used it more as an excuse to walk around. The actual cost of the rooms at the hotel are pretty expensive, even with the discount we get from the convention, but it's also a really nice hotel. I mean, there's a big lobby, everyone of age gets 2 free drinks a night, and the rooms, especially the beds, oh gosh, the beds are pretty big. I know I was impressed last year, and I think Yuzuri was pretty impressed this year. Also, my favorite part, the water features, plants, and colors of the hotel really give it this kind of old Da vibe when you're there. Um, I don't know if everyone feels that way or gets the same feeling, but at least to me, it felt really like kind of being in Olda, which really appropriate for a Final Fantasy XIV convention. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, obviously, but I appreciated it nonetheless. The hotel also has a really nice cafe, which obviously I had to go to, though the cafe does have fairly limited hours. It's primarily open and staffed in the morning, I believe. It has really good coffee, though, and some very good pastries. I actually managed to get some white chocolate raspberry flavored pastries, and I was able to take that up to my room. I think it was supposed to be shared with people, but I was really hungry after our road trip. Oh gosh. In regards to what I actually did though, and like what happens Friday night, it isn't that much. Everyone's arriving at their own pace, and when they get to the hotel, they're fairly tired either from driving or flying. Mostly Friday nights just picking up badges. Vendors are setting up and panelists are getting ready for their panels. Not too much excitement, though this did give Yuzu and I a lot of time to explore St. Charles. And let me tell you, downtown St. Charles, it's a historic district and it is beautiful. I mean, it looks like it belongs on several postcards. It has so many old time small shops and restaurants, and I love it. Yuzu and I ate at this place called Magpie's Cafe, and I had the best soup I've had in a long time. It was this red pepper and cheese soup. And I actually told Yuzu that I ended up being pretty sad that I ordered like soup and sandwich because I would have been so content with just a giant bowl of that soup. It was that good. I cannot say enough about it. Our trip to the restaurant, though, was, as you can tell, pretty much the trip of our Friday night. After exploring downtown St. Charles, we got some Starbucks, we went back to the hotel, and we pretty much just chilled until Saturday. Though, though I do want to point out, Friday evening, I did get to see some friends from social media and YouTube who had arrived early, and that was wonderful. Also, I had the biggest fanboy moment at the badge pickup because not only was there an advertisement for Coffee and Carbuncles in the convention booklet this year, but I got to see on a big schedule there was my panel for Sunday. So being in the booklet twice was so neat to actually be able to like hold that booklet in person and I showed off the advertisement for this podcast to Usury like a little kid. I was just so excited, especially with how well it turned out. Now, if you listened through the first part of that, thank you. If you skipped ahead, welcome. Let's talk about Saturday, the main day of Gateway Fate. So much happened on Saturday. I actually had to talk with Yuzu and look at the schedule again to remember everything. It was so busy. For those that don't know, I usually wake up about 3 or 4 a.m. US Central Time. I'm sure some of you are just like, that's a non-existent time for me. um, Long story about why that is, but it's just how my body does things. So Saturday morning, I'm up super early, and I usually don't have anyone to talk to at the convention, save for like one or two other random people that are either they're up super early for their own reasons, or they have insomnia, or what have you. Last year, I got to have breakfast with Fruity Snacks and got breakfast with him and talked about various content creator stuff, and that was really neat. This year, I had breakfast with some wonderful, wonderful people from the vendor hall who happened to just be up as early as I was for, again, their own reasons. So it isn't all bad. It can just be a little awkward when no one else is awake and you're in a hotel lobby alone. But it's kind of a long wait for the hotel's free breakfast. And so the people who, like one or two people that happen to also be awake, I get to have some very nice conversations with them. And I'm so glad that other people are there. Let's see. By Saturday morning, a lot of people have arrived because Saturday is obviously the main day for Gateway Fate. And so once people wake up, I'm seeing other content creators, I'm seeing other friends, I'm meeting a lot of new people who are just cool Final Fantasy fans who happen to have, like really neat clothing accessories or a cute carbuncle plush or who knows what. And so it's a mingling before convention really starts, before the vendors all run off to the vendor hall and panelists are probably upstairs doing last minute prep work, but also coming down occasionally for food. Now, if I mentioned everyone I ran into at Gateway Fate, this video would be even longer, but I was just so happy to see everyone. I do want to mention that one community member I got to meet for the first time in person is Scribe. After years of chatting and doing content together and just generally getting along really well, it was so nice to finally meet him in person, both in and out of costume, and that was really cool. But I need to tell you guys about Saturday morning after breakfast. Usury and I spent Saturday at the St. Louis Aquarium with Fruity Snacks and several other wonderful people. We signed up for this trip and we all got on a really big bus. And Fruity Snacks has a whole long story about the bus and how that whole thing got scheduled. But we got to check out the aquarium as well as the massive koi pond outside of it. and it was so beautiful. Some of the scenery was so perfect for the Emmett Selk cosplayer that came with us. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but I posted pictures of that on my social media. They also, I didn't get pictures of it, but they had the ceiling above us was all screens, and they had a galaxy and a supernova. And obviously, everyone was talking about the sundering, and it was such a perfect scene for that cosplayer. And they clearly had the time of their life during that like 10-minute span. Though, funny story about that morning, we left the hotel and it had started sprinkling, and I didn't think it was going to rain that much that morning. So I basically arrived in like a t shirt and that's it. And as we arrived at the aquarium, we also got informed that the area was hosting a marathon to raise money for breast cancer research. One of the sponsors of that marathon was handing out free boxes of macaroni and cheese. So we explored the aquarium. The aquarium was lovely. It had stingrays, it had otters, it was fantastic. When we left the aquarium, it had actually started raining pretty heavily, and we had these boxes of macaroni and cheese. So imagine me in just a t-shirt holding two boxes of macaroni and cheese together above my head, using them as a makeshift umbrella as I'm like running to the bus in order to get back to Gateway Fate. I felt so silly, and it was glorious. I was a bit worried though, because on the way back the weather started getting pretty bad. Being from the Midwest, part of me began worrying about if a tornado would pop up, but fortunately that wasn't the case. But what you do need to know for the rest of this story is that by the time we got back to the hotel, it was pitch black and it was thundering and raining pretty bad. So while the storm's raging outside the convention center, Yuzu and I were having a blast inside. We decided to hit the exhibit hall, vendor hall, whatever you want to call it, before we went our separate ways to the various panels we wanted to attend. Every vendor had so much cool stuff. And honestly, it was really difficult to stick to my budget. I know Yuzu was having a really hard time sticking to her budget as well. I mean, there was everything from acrylic keychains to really stunning art, scents and teas based on various characters, all sorts of just really wonderful, really impressive Final Fantasy themed things to buy. I mean, there were even some very cute hand stitched and embroidered stuff, really cute carbuncles made of yarn. Even the convention itself had actually really cool tote bags and these cute lunch boxes that any food you ordered came in based off the scions. It was adorable. I ended up getting a lot of very nice art pieces and some acrylic charms featuring Hythlodaeus and Alize because they're my favorite characters. And I felt really satisfied going through the vendor hall, and it was interesting because things were less expensive than you would expect them to be, but at the same time, it's hard not to want to buy everything. And so, even though things were cheaper than you'd expect, I still found it very, very difficult to stick to my budget. I do want to mention, though, that due to the storm, the power completely went out once or twice. I was in the middle of a panel about Eorzean economics and coinage at the time, and I know that Yuzuri was in the vendor hall, and I heard that everyone at the convention was very calm during the power outages, and it was very chill. And apparently, a lot of the vendors, because obviously all the power is out, they can't really do much. They took that time to, I guess, to relax and also to explore the vendor hall and see what other vendors had on offer. So I'm kind of glad that they got that time to just sort of chill. The convention had a lot of light sticks and stuff for people. So I think a lot of those ended up getting used at the time. I don't know since I wasn't in the vendor hall proper. I also want to add that Saturday afternoon is really when the sense of community fully hit me at the convention. The convention had a guest book everyone could sign. It had a free arts and crafts room people could relax in. It had a library. It had this really cute petting zoo with like really big rabbits and puppies. But also just everyone was so organized. Even in the vendor hall, everyone was forming really organized lines, or if there was like a flood of people around a specific booth, people were being really patient. There was also a Warrior of Light art board and a community notice board made to look like the market boards in 14 in the vendor hall. And just the way I saw people interacting with one another, both from attendee standpoint to panelist or attendee to vendor or attendee to, trying to get a picture with a cosplayer, everyone was just, at least in my opinion, everyone was very considerate and there was a very wonderful sense of community. And that really struck me Saturday in the midst of everything. In regards to the panels themselves, they were fantastic. I just want to take time to mention that the convention had so many different types of panels, from panels about PvP to panels about Eorze's economy to my own panel about role playing. I feel as though a very good cross section of the 14 community was well represented, and there was pretty much a panel for everyone based on your interests in the game. The diversity was great. My only kind of issue is I do wish the convention was maybe also on Friday night or more panels had been placed on Sunday, because it felt like with how many panels had been scheduled on Saturday, Yuzu and I had to make some very hard choices about which panels to attend at which time, because at some point Saturday there were like 3 or 4 panels that sounded very good that all happened to be in the same block, and that felt very unfortunate. And Yuzuri had said afterwards that that was pretty much her only issue with it as well. That being said, though, the panels were fantastic and definitely worth checking out. Now, as I get into talking about Saturday evening, I want to preface this by saying I was so exhausted. Yuzu and I had been at panels all day, and while we had so much fun, we had been doing stuff all day from breakfast until about 7 p.m., and I was completely drained. But I was heading back to my hotel room and I ran into Scribe, and he was like, "Hey, so I'm going to dinner with 2 of my Discord mods. Would you like to come with?" And I mean, it's Scribe. I wasn't going to say no. So I texted Yuzu, and the 5 of us ended up having a really nice dinner. It We did have to keep an eye on the clock though, because John Oath had a performance Saturday night, and I love his YouTube channel. I love seeing him perform. He's such a nice guy. And for those that don't know, John Oath is an acoustic guitarist who covers a lot of RPG music and has some amazing Final Fantasy covers. But following John's performance, I relaxed for, I'd say, about half an hour, and then Yuzu and I attended Dragsidia. Dragsidia was wild. This is the second year for it, and it's a Final Fantasy themed. The words to describe it, it was incredible. I never really pictured myself as someone who would attend drag shows, and the performers brought so much energy to the performance that even if you're someone who's like, I don't want to attend a drag show or I can't picture myself attending one, it's definitely worth going to, because just the amount of enthusiasm and energy in the room is very intense. it's hard not to get swept up in it. I've only myself ever attended two drag shows in my life, and they've both been at Gateway Fate, and I loved it both times. Just the sheer creativity that goes into every performance, it's a sight to behold. Now, I do want to say though that I felt bad for missing the social prom at Gateway Fate. By the time Saturday night rolled around and we had got done with John's performance, I was barely awake. To be honest, I really considered not going to Dragsidia and just calling it a day, but ultimately I'm glad I went. But I really do feel bad about not going to the social prom because it seemed like everyone had a great time there, and next year I definitely want to attend. Also, while I'm thinking about it, that goes back to my point about Gateway Fate having something for everyone because Saturday night, in the same evening, we literally had a social prom, an acoustic guitar concert, and a drag show all on Saturday evening. So, something for everyone. So Saturday evening, I got back to my hotel room following Dragsidia and just crashed. I was so exhausted. I was happy, I was elated, but I was very exhausted. And to be honest with you, I didn't do much Saturday morning. Sunday at noon was my first ever in-person hour-long panel. I just realized I said Saturday morning instead of Sunday, but I'm talking about Sunday morning. It pretty much all of Sunday morning for me was hermiting in my room, double checking my panel. I was so nervous, you guys. But at noon on Sunday was my panel, and I want to talk about it for a bit. First off, so many people were encouraging and supporting of me having my first ever live panel, and I appreciate everyone. I had done previous panels online at AetherCon/LunarCon, but I've never done something in person like that. And the support I got and the encouragement was fantastic, especially those that came and sat through the entire panel. Thank you so much. I was so nervous. My panel this year was about how to make a roleplay character, and the reason for that is I realize there are a lot of panels and a lot of good guides online that discuss, all right, you have a character in 14, this is where you should go, and this is the etiquette for role playing with them. But I realize there's a lack of talking about, well, how do we make a role play character? How do I take this character I already have, and how do I expand on their lore? How do I expand on their personality so that I can use them for role play? And I admit it started with a few boring slides because we went over basic character creation stuff. But then we get into more complex things like what unique traits does your character have? What is their relationship with, say, the city states or their religion or Garlemald? And things that really flesh out how they respond to various topics and various situations. The room was pretty full. And honestly, it was a fun experience. It was fantastic. I would love to host another panel next year, but I have no idea what it would be about. Hopefully, sometime between now and then, I'll figure out something. But if not, I'll just attend and enjoy all the amazing other panels at the convention instead. Also, for those of you that missed my panel or weren't able to attend, or even for those that did attend and want to see the information again, I am working on posting a version of that panel to YouTube, and it should be out either later this month or early December. But following my panel, that was also pretty much me being done at Gateway Fate. I mean, the panel was from noon to 1, and Yuzu and I had a 4-hour drive back home and really wanted to get back before nightfall. So, following my panel, we got lunch, and I got to listen to a bit of Rook's panel about kimono. It it was good from what I saw of it. I still plan to check out the full thing on YouTube later, but I still wish I had gotten to listen to the full thing in person and actually sit through it. But it started right when my panel ended, and by the time my panel was done, I was just nothing but like nerves and hunger. So lunch was definitely the priority at that time. But following lunch and listening to some of Rook's panel, Yuzu and I pretty much got our stuff out of the hotel rooms and went home. So yeah, that was Gateway Fate 2025. So ultimately, what are my final thoughts on Gateway Fate? If I had to sum up Gateway Fate, I would say that it was an amazing convention that very vibrantly expresses the love and passion people have for Final Fantasy XIV. It is a wonderful community gathering, and it's just such a great time. For those still on the fence about the convention, I sincerely hope that you'll choose to attend next year if it's hosted again. People talk a lot online about what is the 14 community and what it isn't, but being part of that community in person for 2 days at Gateway Fate, it really reminds you that so much of the talk about the 14 community online is just nonsense. Gateway Fate was great, guys. People seemed to be having a great time and getting along well. Everyone acted decent. No one was hating on the game or trolling other people or causing any type of major disruption just to be seen. I mean, it was a genuinely wonderful time with a community that has just so much heart, and I cannot recommend it enough. And I really do hope that I see you guys at year 3 of Gateway Fate, because just like with year 2, if they announce a year 3, the moment they do, I am all in. With that being said, thank you so much for listening, and I hope all of you take care, and I'll hopefully see you during the next episode of Coffee and Carbuncles. Take care.